So this is a practice data sort of an analysis activity where you'll essentially be, what we're going to do is we're going to look at descriptives from the data that we coded, the observations that we certainly tallied the different times we saw different speech from the child or different speech from the teacher. And I had I sort of instructed you to look at different things within these two observations. And so I went and kind of made up my own data for the purposes of this example here, this demonstration. So you'll likely have different answers from what I have here. So we're going to look at descriptives, which is essentially a way of like looking at our data and getting sort of an idea for what's going on in the data. It's like kind of like a picture of our data, as opposed to sort of analyzing it and looking at sort of the relationships between two variables. We're just looking at sort of a descriptive picture of what we see in our data. And so to do that, we're going to look at two different things. We're going to look at a bar chart, a pie chart, and a line graph. And so this little segment will walk through the first part, which we'll do a bar chart and a pie chart, or pie chart and a bar chart. And then the next one we'll do a line graph. So what you'll need for this is you'll need to have a full version of Excel. This is available to you as a WCU student for free. So I've given some information in a module that has how to obtain that if you don't have a full version of this. And if you have questions about that, contact me and I'll kind of direct you in the right place to download that. Okay, so you will need the full version of Excel and the data that you practiced coding last week, or the observations that you tallied last week. The first thing you want to do is you want to just add up the number of times you saw behavior 1 and add up the number of times you saw behavior 2. And then you need to also label those. So I've labeled mine child speech and teacher speech because that's essentially what we're looking at. And once you've done that, you can just put in the number of times you saw it. So the child spoke 15 times, the teacher spoke 12 times. Like I said, this is not necessarily the number of times that this is kind of made up data. So if you have different numbers, that's fine. And you should. So the first thing we'll do is a pie chart. And so to do a pie chart, we will essentially highlight each of these different cells right here, and then go over to data. No, I'm sorry, not data. Sorry, scratch that. I mean insert. And then this will bring up the different options for charts over here. We're going to choose pie chart. You're welcome to do the 3-dimensional donut or the flat 2-dimensional one. I'll choose the 2-dimensional one. And then once you've got this up and it looks like you've got sort of the right proportions, there's the proportion of time the child spoke versus the proportion of time the teacher spoke, you need to title this. So I'm going to be looking that you have a title. I'm just going to say child and teacher. And you can title it anything you want. And then you also need to change the font so that, because this is kind of small, it's difficult to read. And so to do that, you'll either right click, or depending on how your mouse is set up, mine's a right click. Go to font and then just change the size of the font to whatever size seems appropriate. I just chose 20. And also do that with the title, 20. Okay, and there you go. That's pretty good little graph or little pie chart of the number of times that the different behaviors occurred. You can also change the orientation of that by clicking on the actual graph or the pie chart here, going over to this right here, this little bar graph icon, and then this can actually rotate it to kind of line up where the way the labels are. So the child's speech lines up and the teacher's speech line up. Anyway, could mess with this all day. All right. Anyway, all right. So what I want to see is that you have a title, that your labels are correct. You're welcome to flip it if you want. That's not necessarily, but you will. I am looking that you have essentially set up this way here. And then we'll do the same thing with a bar chart. So do the same thing, highlight the cells, go to insert, and then go to this right here and choose, this one looks good. You can choose any one of those you want. And again, just changing the label here. Up. And then the size of the font. Let's go with 20 again. And then we change this again. Font. It's 18. We'll go to 20 just to stay consistent. Okay. All right. So now we've got the number of times the child spoke on the y-axis here. We've got the labels on the x-axis here. Child speech, the child spoke 15 times. That's consistent with what we see here. Teachers looks like spoke 12 times. That's consistent with what we have here. And so this is essentially what I'm looking for, that you have the labels here and the proper title, and everything seems to be correct. And that's essentially the first part of the practice analysis activity. And the second part, you will go through and you'll do the same thing for the lower part. So it's the same sort of labeling and everything. You'll just have an additional column here, and you'll do that for the behavior 1, behavior 2, behavior 3. So for that, you'll have a pie chart and a bar chart for both of those. We don't have the data to do a line graph, but we will do that in the next lab. Okay, if you have questions, send me a course message.